Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Crystal, just in case you're new here, and today I have a September and October wrap up for you guys. It's been a long time since I've told you guys what I've read. I've told you guys what I've been wanting to read, but what did I actually read? So let's just get into it. Over the months of September and October, I read a decent amount of books. I did not read much in August at all. I think the last thing that I read was The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson, and that was like July 31st was the day that I marked it read on Goodreads. After that, I didn't really pick up anything until like the beginning of September. It's to take the month of August and kind of rejuvenate myself. Also, being back at work was pretty rough. So I have here, which I'm gonna go over my Goodreads because this is how I track my reading. I read 17 books from September to October, which is really good for me because I'm lucky if I can finish 3 books in a month. But I just was on a reading sprint, I guess you could say. So in no particular order, because I just have a large stack here and I just don't want to go in the order that I read, but it might go that way. We'll see what happens. First book that I read was Anne Rice, The Witching Hour. And I really can't say that I read because I DNF'd this book at like the halfway point. I got so bored of the writing in here, and I was really enjoying it up until the halfway point where it just continued on this broad history of this family of witches that I just didn't care about a lot of things that were being mentioned. So it was really interesting, and Anne Rice does have a way with words, but her words just bore me, I think. Maybe one day I will revisit it, but because it's such a chunker, it was taking up so much of my time and I just couldn't waste any more time. So on the grand scale of reading halfway through, I'd give it 2.5 stars, 3 stars, well, 3 stars because the writing is great. It's just, who edited this? Like, there just needs to be someone to like edit it. Is there an abridged version that I could read? Maybe, I don't know, but yeah, just way too much history, and I love history, but after a while it's just like you lose sight of the plot and like, what is this story really about? And there was just a lot of incest, which is, whew, it was pretty dense. Next I have a reread, and that is Salem Slot by Stephen King. This was our constantly reading book club pick for the month of September, and this was a great reread. I love so much about vampires, like everything about vampires I love, and you'll see that in October also, but this kind of just set it off for me. I just love books about vampires. I reread this, and of course it is a 5-star read for me. It's just the perfect book to get you into, well, one of the perfect books, but a perfect book to get you in the mood for the fall. It just has great description of New England, especially Maine, obviously, Castle Rock area, Salem Slot area, where it does take place. It just really gives you like the autumn vibes, and this hardback edition is really great. So even just reading this version was just really nice to pick up. So highly recommend this. Like I said, 5 out of 5 stars for a reread. And I'm glad I picked it up again because it kind of jump-started this reading for me. I was in such a reading slump, especially after The Witching Hour and getting nowhere with it, that picking this up just kind of jump-started my reading again. I have here a book called The Ghost Tree, and this is by Christina Henry. This was such a great murder mystery, supernatural type of book. I don't know if it's based on any fairy tales or anything, because I know Christina Henry had done like a retelling of Alice in Wonderland, a retelling of Little Red Riding Hood, so I'm not sure if this book does correlate with that, but it does take place in a small town in the 1980s. And there is like racism going on, so you see that at the forefront of things. And there's, you know, just the small town vibes of people just judging each other and all that stuff. This older woman, who was probably one of the most racist people in the book, she goes out into her backyard one evening and discovers two brutally murdered girls with their bodies basically torn apart. She calls the cops. The cops come, and one of the cops is kind of investigating the body, and then the body just talks to him and is basically like, help us. So that's pretty creepy. And then you have other points of views of different characters where the story relates. And our main character, her father was killed by the ghost tree or committed suicide. You don't really know, but the ghost tree is also a place where her family would go and congregate, and they'd hang out there. It's in the woods, and it's a place where her and her friends would always meet up before they went on adventures and did things together. So the ghost tree is definitely a meeting point for our main character, who is also experiencing psychic phenomena and seeing things before they happen, along with her younger brother, who is like a Danny Torrance character, which is referenced in here. I will say there's a lot of like 70s, 80s references in here. It's great, especially horror references. I love it. So this is like a really great book. And then our main character has to kind of put together what's happening to these girls. Is it supernatural? Is it not? And what happened with her father all those, you know, those years ago where he was murdered, or was he by the ghost tree? And it's just a great small town spooky supernatural story. Kind of along the lines of The Outsider by Stephen King, it reminds me of, and a little bit of Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky, like that kind of vibe. But Christina Henry really owns it, and I would say she did a lot better than both of them in that aspect. So I would say 5 stars for this book, and highly recommend picking it up if you want a really spooky horror, small town story, supernatural creatures, psychic phenomena, really cool story. And I'm glad I found this. This was purchased on a whim while I was at the bookstore one day. I went in with no intentions of buying anything. I just wanted to peruse the shelves and just kind of go with how I used to purchase books before there was the internet. Just walking around the bookstore or the library, just finding the perfect book, and I did. I didn't hear anything about this book. It is a little gem, and I highly recommend picking it up if you want a really great horror story. The book that I read in September is Alice Hoffman's Magic Lessons, and this is a prequel to the prequel of Practical Magic. This follows Maria Owens, who is the witch of a long line of witches, of Owens witches, and she's the one who basically set off the curse that does curse the Owens women, where that if any man just so happens to fall in love with an Owens woman, he is doomed to die. And you know, I just love that. I love everything about Practical Magic. If you've been watching my channel for a long time, Practical Magic is probably one of my favorite books of all time, and I just love Alice Hoffman as a person, as a writer. She's just brilliant and beautiful, and I just love everything about the Owens women as well, and I want her to write more about them. I gave this a 5 out of 5 star. This follows Maria Owens in Salem, Massachusetts, also her journey through England to Salem to New York to an island off the Bahamas, just her way of getting to where she was going in life, and how she fell in love and how the curse came to be. And we also follow her daughter, who is a little mischievous and definitely takes chances in life, and it's just such a beautifully written story. I especially love the parts in Salem, and I just loved her love interest in here as well. I thought he was really romantic and sweet. He was a Jewish pirate, and I just thought that was really cool. It was such a beautiful story. I don't know how she made it happen she's just magical the way she writes, Alice Hoffman. But yeah, I cherish this book. I want to reread it. I loved it. I was never bored a second. I took my time reading it because I loved it that much, and I just wanted to walk away with so much from this book, and I did. And yeah, I don't know, what more can I say? 5 out of 5 stars. It's a beautiful prequel. Check it out if you love practical magic, if you like the rules of magic. I highly recommend this for everybody. This book that I picked up that I was highly anticipating was The Orphan of Cemetery Hill by Hester Fox. I didn't love this as much as her previous works. I won't say that it's a bad book, but I just feel like Hester rushed this a little bit. Her writing is not as like flowery and beautiful as it was. Also, the plot was not as like gothic and spooky, and you would think so because this takes place in a cemetery. It follows a main character who talks to ghosts. I wasn't feeling the vibes. It just wasn't, the atmosphere just wasn't there for me. Also, the plot was a lot about like grave robbery, and I didn't like the love interest character as much. It was very hard for this book to hold my focus. So I don't know about anybody else that reads Hester Fox's books, but The Widow of Pale Harbor and The Witch of Willow Hall was amazing. They're both like 2 of my favorite Gothic fictional historical fiction stories. I love them. This one just kind of missed the mark for me, and I'm a little upset about it. So I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars because I do love Hester Fox's writing. I just felt like there was a lot missing to the story that I just wasn't feeling it. Then the next book that I finished was Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. Wow. Let me tell you about this book. Now, I know this is a hugely popular book on booktube right now. Everybody's reading it. Everyone, I feel like, has the same reaction to it as well. But I like really love this book. Like, this is a 5 out of 5 star, 10 out of 5 star for me. I really love this book. This is one of my favorite books that I read this month. Well, this was the favorite book that I read this month because after reading it, nothing compared to it. It was just so picturesque, and it was so gothic and so spooky, and I love this author's writing. I cannot wait to read more from her. I think her writing just speaks to me. I don't know, but yes, I will never look at mushrooms the same. This follows a woman who, it does take place in Mexico. It follows a young woman whose cousin goes off and gets married and is living at this mansion, unheard of for quite some time, and then she receives these letters from her cousin saying that she's scared and she's not feeling well and like something's just not right. So her family tells her, go visit your cousin, go figure out what's going on over there, and you know, bring her home if you have to, like whatever the case is, but go be with her. So our main character goes there and starts discovering things just are not right in this mansion. I mean, mansion. And things are just haunting. She's starting to have like night sweats and dreams and seeing things in the corner of her eye. And her cousin is pretty comatose at most parts as well, which is so not like her character, and she wasn't sick or anything, so like something just was not right, and the story goes on from there. And I don't want to give too much away because it's not that long of a book, so like if I start talking more, it's gonna start giving away spoilers, because I don't know how to talk about this book without giving away spoilers. But I will say, like, funguses play a really, really big part in this book, and just make sure you check your house for any like mold or fungus or anything, because I'm paranoid now. But other than that, I love this book. 10 out of 5 stars. Like I said, this is my favorite book that I read, and probably will make it to like my top 5. Definitely will be on my top 5 for the year. Then another book that I read, this one is actually in October, is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I actually really enjoyed this. I also watched The Haunting of Bly Manor, which was so amazing. I'm still crying from that show. It was so good. It had a little bit of a slow start, but oh my goodness, that story, that was the perfect Gothic ghost story, and if there is one, it is that. It was so amazing, and I almost wish I read it instead of saw it on TV, but it was really just so perfect, so perfect. So I read this in lieu of the TV show coming out, and I really loved it. It was a little boring. At parts I was like, what is really happening? There's really not much that happens in this, to be honest with you. Like, if you think you're going in here and you're gonna be reading this epic ghost story and like crazy hauntings and like crazy things happen, like, yes, there is that, but at the same time, not much happens. There's definitely more books out there that have those qualities to it, but I really liked it. I thought Shirley Jackson did a great job with building an atmosphere of what's lurking in the shadows. It's a great Gothic story. It's short, so if you want something that's just gonna give you goosebumps and kind of make you look over your shoulder a little bit, this is the book for you, but it's nothing really scary, not like the TV show. And I gave it 5 out of 5 stars because I really enjoyed it. I've been wanting to read a lot more classics. And I purchased I have a lot of classics also, but I purchased a lot of classics recently, and I want to kind of just break through like the Rory Gilmore reading list and just get more familiar with literature. So The Haunting of Hill House kind of introduced me to a little bit more of like that classic writing style. I mean, it's not as old as some of the works that I have up there, and like Dracula and stuff like that, which I finished this month as well. Getting back to The Haunting of Hill House, I just felt that it is a classic, and I feel like a lot of people know it as a classic. It's a classic like Gothic horror. And getting back to Dracula, which I also finished in October. Dracula, if you didn't know, by Bram Stoker, is basically it's an original story about Dracula. Bram Stoker really believed that Dracula was real. I read Dracula last year, and there's an author's note in there that explains the whole thing about like how Bram Stoker brought Dracula to his editor or to the publisher and said, this is a true story, print this, like I want people to know about this. And it was around the time of Jack the Ripper, when Jack the Ripper was ripping people's heads off, basically. So they didn't want to scare people too much because they're already being terrorized in the streets by Jack the Ripper. So they printed it as fiction. But so it makes you feel like, is it real? I always had a feeling vampires were real. I just always did. I don't know why. I have a thing about like learning about them and all of that fun stuff. So reading Dracula was a lot of fun. Rereading it for the 3rd time. The first time I decided to pick up Dracula, I want to say I was in 5th grade. Now if you follow me on Instagram, you heard this story already, but I was in 5th grade. I picked it up. My mom took me to the bookstore, and I was like, I want this book. I'm gonna read it. And it was around October, so I was trying to get into like spooky mood, you know, like I am now, like I did this year, as I do every year. And I brought it into my music class. Now I wasn't really interested in my music class. Like I wanted to be a singer, but everyone wanted to be a singer in 5th grade. Britney Spears. And I started reading it in class, and my teacher was like, whoa, 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 who do you think you are reading Dracula? And I was like, you know, I was very shy and introverted. And, you know, he basically told me that I wasn't smart enough to read the book. So, it kind of stuck with me. I'll never forget that teacher. He was a jerk. It always kind of stuck with me. So every time I revisit that book or look at it and see it, it kind of brings that back to me and makes me realize like how far I've come as a reader and in literature, and I am smart enough to read Dracula. It's freaking awesome as well. So thank you, teacher from 5th grade, for being a jerk. Moving on, so speaking of Dracula, I also in the month of October, because of Allie at Hardback Hoarder, which is her YouTube channel name, in case you didn't know. She did a vampires video, which was so good. She did a quality production on that video, and I highly suggest go looking at it. I'll link it down below for you guys to check out, because if you haven't, it's hilarious, it's great. And she just breaks down the most popular vampire stories over the years, and how they kind of just all flow together, and like just how vampires kind of have evolved over the years. She did a great job with that. So from that video, I found out about The Historian, which I have right here. The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. I immediately ordered this book and I ate it up. Not only does this book have a shit ton of like university talk and dark academia vibes, which I'm loving right now, and I think everyone else is on booktube right now, but the history of Dracula and Vlad the Impaler and how it correlates, and oh my goodness, this was a thrilling ride through history. I loved it so much. It's a thick one, it's a big one. I will say it does lag a little bit in the middle, and I gave it a 4-star, only because when you get to the end of this book, you're gonna be like, all of that for this? The ending is very disappointing compared to what you feel that the story is going to lead up to. This book really makes you believe that vampires are real. I truly believe vampires are real because of this book, and it was thrilling. Like, for a historical fiction book that is about literature, libraries, history, all of those dark academia things, and like going back and switching from timelines and all of that, it was just so good, so good. So I definitely I highly recommend you check this out if you really love Dracula and vampires and you want to just know more, and you like dark academia vibes like everyone else on booktube right now. I highly suggest picking this up. Then the next book that I got to this month was Horrified by Katrina Leto. I didn't enjoy this as much as I thought I would. It was a fun read. I read it rather quickly. It's a haunted house book, but it also deals with a lot of dark subject matter, a lot of, there's like self-harm in here, so definitely be careful and tread lightly when reading this, because there are some triggering content in here. But it is about, I would say that this is a great book to pick up for the Gilmore Girls-a-thon, if you're looking for a book that has like a mother-daughter relationship, because this has a great mother-daughter relationship, and I totally feel like Rory and Lorelai vibes from them, but like in a horror aspect. They have that balance, and they have that relationship with each other like Rory and Lorelai do. So I would say this is like the Gilmore Girls horror edition over here. But I really enjoyed this book. It's just not as like, it wasn't as scary, and I think coming off of like reading The Historian and watching The Haunting of Bly Manor and all that stuff, it kind of wasn't as spooky for me, but it does deal with like definitely dark subject matter. I do love Katrina Leto's writing, and it's beautiful. I just love Summer of Salt so much better. Been talking for so long that my battery died and I had to go get a new battery, so I'm back. The next book that I read was A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. Now, I DNF'd this book for now. I think I'm gonna revisit it, but I just was not, I don't know what I was reading. I feel like it was just so all over the place, and it's another one of her books that I just can't read, and I don't know if it's her writing style that I'm just not into. I don't know, but like I feel like there's so much of, I feel like, you know, like the feeling when you pick up a book and you like, it feels like I started in the middle of a story. Like I don't know anything about this book. I don't know anything about the school. I don't know anything about the character. No, there's no background. My sweater keeps falling off. There's like no background for me to follow, and it's so irritating. Like so irritating, because I wish I had more of like a history. And I think if it was another 100 pages in the beginning where like there was some world building and things like that, we could have gotten so much more out of this story. And by the time I got to like the 100-page mark, I was like not following at all. And I liked our main character, but she was becoming a little annoying. She was very snarky, and sometimes you want to root for the villain, because she is a villain, kind of. But she does like nice things, but then she's like, you know, mean. She's very mean in her brain and like her thought processes, and she's always out, like she wants to be like the best at everything, and I don't really know where like the story was going, and I just couldn't put myself through it anymore because there were so many other books that I wanted to read, and I was really into the idea of this book. I will say that. I was really into the idea of the dark academia vibes, the magic school vibes, especially how they were saying it was like a Harry Potter, but like if the roles were flipped with Draco and Harry and an adult, like more of like a college version. I would say if you're looking for something like that, pick up The Magicians by Lev Grossman. I think that's more of a great explanation of that than what this was. Let me know your thoughts down below if you read this book, and maybe I'm just missing something. Maybe it just wasn't the right time for me to read it. I don't know, but like I said, I DNF'd it because I just couldn't put myself through it. I don't know, and I'm really upset about it. Oh. I dropped it. It didn't like me either. So moving on. So the next books that I have were for Fright Week during Halloween, and I read a couple books. I didn't have the most successful Fright Week, and nor did I think Fright Week turned out the way that I wanted it to, but that's another story for another day. But anyway, I read Uzumaki, it's upside down, Uzumaki by Junji Ito. Interesting, scary, horrific, love the pictures. I just don't know if I'll like read any more of Junji Ito. It has nothing to do with like the story. His just stories are just so out there, and I enjoyed it. I did, but I'm just not a manga girl, I think. I just like to read more literature than something like this, but this is a great thing to like add to a readathon, stuff like that, because you do fly through mangas so much quicker than you do novels. But yeah, it was interesting, and I won't look at snails the same. So I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was Halloween Season by Lucy Schneider. I have this on my Kindle. I've really enjoyed this. There are some stories I was just bored of, and I feel like that's with any short story collection. Some you like, some you don't like, but this was really fun and nostalgic. There was a lot of references to the 90s and the 80s, and I really enjoyed that because I grew up in the 90s, and I assume that this author did as well, because just the Halloween vibes that I got from it, like children on Halloween during the 90s, like I just felt it, and yeah, it just gave me like nostalgic feel, so I really enjoyed it. I gave that a 4 out of 5 stars. It was a fun short story collection. I highly recommend reading it in the fall or Halloween, during Halloween especially. I want to say that's the book that got me like in the Halloween spirit, because I was reading stories that took place on Halloween night, which I really thought was cool, and especially it was kind of, some of them were like referencing like my childhood. The next book that I finished for Fright Week was Halloween Party by Agatha Christie. I love Agatha Christie. I've been reading Agatha Christie since I'm a kid. But I just didn't really love this one. I felt like it was either rushed or it wasn't written by her and they just put her name on it for sales. I don't know. But it just didn't have her flair like her other books do. It just didn't feel like an Agatha Christie book to me. But it was good. It was kind of like disturbing a bit because it was about a death of like a 12-year-old kid that was bobbing for apples and someone just drowned them in the tub. And they're trying to figure out like who at the Halloween party did it. So it was really cool. It was good. It took place on Halloween night, obviously, but it followed up into November. And yeah, so I mean, it was good. It's a great quick book to pick up for a readathon. So next year for Halloween, if you're looking for like a quick mystery thriller type book to pick up, I recommend it. And it has a pumpkin on the cover, and yeah, so it has Halloween vibes. It's just not like, it wasn't like the greatest Agatha Christie, you know? Next, I read The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which I have up here on my classic shelf. I just didn't want to take it down because I wanted my shelves to look pretty in my video. But I read The Legend of Sleepy Hollow again, and now that's a great short story to get you in the mood for fall. The atmosphere is amazing. Like the Tim Burton film, it's just like, you could just picture that type of atmosphere. And it's just a great ghostly, spooky story. So I recommend that one. even now, if you want to read something that's spooky, I know a lot of people in the fall just want to read like spooky stuff because the fall is kind of spooky and dark and dreary, and yeah. Then next, I read a couple of Edgar Allan Poe's stories because those are great to get yourself into the Halloween spirit. So that I have up here, which is my other classic edition there. I read The Telltale Heart, I read The Raven, I read The Pit and the Pendulum, I read The Black Cat, and what else did I read? I forgot. Gosh darn it. Oh, The Mask of Red Death. Great. Great stories. They're amazing if you want to, like I said, read some spooky stuff right now. Edgar Allan Poe is great to get into, especially if you're someone who wants to get more into classics and more into like the literary side of reading. His work is a work of art. It really is. You can't even compare to anybody out there right now, his writing. It just stands the test of time. So obviously I gave all those stories 5 out of 5 stars. And then I read Dark Harvest by Norman Partridge. That I also read on my Kindle, and I didn't love it at all. I was kind of like so let down by the story, and it was a really cool premise because it was like about like this being that like chases people on Halloween night, and it's like this scarecrow looking thing, jack-o'-lantern thing. It just wasn't, I just wasn't into it. I didn't really know what was going on, and I just didn't think the writing was that great. So I give that a 3 out of 5 stars because I liked the premise, I liked the idea of it. It just didn't, it wasn't executed in a way that like really interested me. That's it. That's all for my wrap up for September and October. I read a lot of books, a lot of dense books as well, and even for November I'm reading a lot more dense books as well. But there were so many books that I wasn't able to get to, so I'm hoping this month in November I get to them. But I'm not doing a TBR video for that. I am going to be participating in the Gilmore Girls Readathon, which is hosted by Heather at Bookables. Darling Desi, which I'm loving her channel right now, all the content that she's putting out. Liv from Life with Liv, and Mackenzie from the channel Mackenzie Lane. They're all hosting the Gilmore Girls Readathon, and I think it's such a great idea. I haven't decided if I'm going to do the bingo board yet or if I'm going to do the prompts, but I will check in with you guys with a video on what I'm reading for that very soon. And I was thinking about doing Believe-a-thon, but I'm not exactly sure because I have some classics up here that I'd like to get to for the month of November. That is it. That is all I have for you guys today. Thank you for watching so much, and if you like this video and you want to see more wrap-ups from me, please just make sure you like and subscribe down below. That helps me out a lot. Also, if you are interested, I do have an Etsy shop where I sell book sleeves, and this is new this month. This is my Gilmore Girls book sleeve. It is lined with fleece and it's machine washable. So if you're interested, the link to my Etsy shop will be down below, and I also make Kindle cases for that as well. So on that note, I will be talking to you guys soon.